Today's verses is 59 to 65. Like there's no purports. Somehow or the other. Okay, so what to do? Just go ahead and I'll read these last verses to the end of the chapter. Seems like there's no purports in any one of them. Smirteve hayam pariklesham tata phala viparyayam abhayam anihayam sankalpad viratmet kave smirtivayam pariklesham tata phala viparyayam abhayam kapi anihayam sankalpad viramet kavi smirtvayam pariklesham tata phala viparyayam abhayam kapi anihayam sankalpad viramet kavi. Okay, anyone wants to recite the verse?
Smritvehayam pariklesham tata phala viparyayam apayam chapyani hayam sankalpad viramet kavihi.
Okay, anyone else?
Smritvehayam pariklesham tata phala viparyayam abhayam chapyanihayam sankalpad viramet kavi.
Okay, thank you. Smirtva, remembering. Itayam, in the field of activities with fruit of results. Pariklesham, the waste of energy and the miserable conditions. Tata, from that. Phala viparyayam, the opposite of the desired result. Abhayam, fearlessness. Ja, also. Api, indeed. Anihayam, when there is no desire for fruitive results. Sankalpat, from material desire. Viramit, should cease. Kavi, one who is advanced in knowledge. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Remembering the great trouble found in the field of activities performed for fruitive results, and remembering how one receives the reverse of the results one desires, whether from material actions or from fruitive activities recommended in the Vedic literatures, an intelligent man should cease from the desire for fruitive actions, for by such endeavors one cannot achieve the ultimate goal of life. On the other hand, if one acts without desires for fruitive results, in other words, if one engages in devotional activities, he can achieve the highest goal of life with freedom from miserable conditions. Considering this, one should cease from material desires. Text 60. As husband and wife, a man and woman plan together to attain happiness and decrease unhappiness, working jointly in many ways, But because their activities are full of desires, their activities are never a source of happiness, and they never diminish distress. On the contrary, they are a cause of great unhappiness. Wow. Text 61, 62. One should understand that the activities of persons who are proud of their material experience bring only results contradictory to those such persons. One should understand that the activities of persons who are proud of their material experience bring only results contradictory to those such persons conceive while awake, sleeping, and deeply sleeping. One should further understand that the spirit soul, although very difficult for the materialist to perceive, is above all these conditions, and by the strength of one's discrimination, one should give up the desire for fruitive results in the present life and in the next. Thus, becoming experienced in transcendental knowledge, one should become my devotee. Text 63. Persons who try to reach the ultimate goal of life must expertly observe the Supreme Absolute Person and the living entity, who are one in quality in their relationship as part and whole. This is the ultimate understanding of life. There is no better truth than this. O King, if you accept this conclusion of mine, being unattached to material enjoyment, adhering to me with great faith, and thus becoming proficient and fully aware of knowledge and its practical application in life, you will achieve the highest perfection by attaining me. Text 65. Sri Sukadev Goswami continued, after thus instructing Chitraketu and assuring him of perfection in this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Spiritual Master, the Supreme Soul, Shankarshan disappeared from that place as Chitraketu looked on. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya. Purport, sorry. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 16th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Chitraketu Meets the Supreme Lord. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmitam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhurevacha Patita Nama Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I apologize, devotees, for being late and very, very unprepared. We have had a retreat. This is my excuse. The midweek retreat. Very, very nice people from Washington, D.C. area, AmeriCorps, and they just came to be together on the farm, relax, rejuvenate themselves, and get ready for their strenuous services back in the city again. So this is the 4th year that they've come to Gita Nagari, and they really enjoy themselves here. Even though it's a short retreat, it's normally just Wednesday night, Thursday night, and they leave Friday after breakfast. But really amazing people. This work that they do of mediation is, of course, very intricate, very, very tough in the material world. So they come for some solace and do some activities with the devotees here and yoga. They did some nice activity with Mother Yashoda Mai the other day. And in this way, some relationship is developing. Quite a few of them, I think half of them may have been coming back again the second time. Repeatedly. So very nice group. So nevertheless, back to Bhagavatam, 59. Of course, we can see in these verses the message to Chitraketu is, very, very clear that an intelligent man should cease from the desire for fruitive actions, because in this way you will never be able to get to the goal of life, which is going back home, back to Godhead. We'll just remain, if we continue to desire fruitive actions, we've painted this picture before. We will just continuously take birth in the cycle of birth and death repeatedly for many, many millions and billions of lifetimes. And, with no end in sight, because we'll just be accumulating good karma and bad karma. So we learned earlier on, maybe even in the previous chapter, we learned that the idea is to gradually elevate ourselves to the mode of goodness and use that as a springboard to get onto the transcendental platform. Because from there it's a little easier to get onto the transcendental platform. Just from the mode of ignorance to get to the transcendental platform is a very, very difficult feat. I don't think it's impossible, but a very, very difficult feat. So the idea is to gradually purify ourselves, all these layers, conditionings, from so many millions of lifetimes, deeply embedded within our heart. So we want to gradually purify ourselves by performing devotional service. And when we engage in devotional service, it becomes a little easier for us to shed these layers. So in one sense, the activities might not need change, although sometimes there is some necessity to change the activities, depending on what the activity is. If someone is engaged in some sinful activity, of course, you have to change that. But if it's not in the realm of sinful activity, if one is just performing, regular so-called mundane work, Prabhupada has addressed this on many occasions, but it just depends on your consciousness of why you're working in the so-called mundane world. So if you just have a regular job, whatever it is, being an engineer, being a doctor, being a lawyer, whatever it is, it just depends your consciousness with which you're doing these types of work. And if one is conscious of Krishna, and utilizing the income he gets to develop his Krishna consciousness, then there is no problem with doing so-called mundane work, because your consciousness is different. Technically, it's not even in the mundane category. It may seem mundane to some people, but it just depends on our consciousness. So the idea is not to perform fruitive activities, because there's no end in sight. We'll never achieve the goal of life. We want to perform devotional service. And of course, in the realm of devotional service, there's unlimited activities. So somehow or the other, we need to remember what is the goal of life. Why are we doing our different activities from a day-to-day basis? And we want to hear about Krishna and, his name, form, qualities, pastimes. And of course, it's recommended in this age of Kali Yuga that we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And so, of course, very, very difficult to practice, different types of meditation, different types of yoga. And it's recommended in the Shastra that the easiest way in this age of Kali Yuga is chanting the holy names of the Lord. So in this way, we can make rapid advancement in our spiritual lives by regularly chanting Hare Krishna, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and associating with devotees. Of course, we want to associate with advanced devotees to get maximum benefit, but nevertheless, associating with devotees will gradually bring the desired result. And then text 60, there's this heavy verse. And of course, each one of us is interpreting these verses according to our own realizations. But it just depends where on our journey in Krishna consciousness all of us are at, that we will interpret things in a different way. So in this verse, as husband and wife, a man and woman plan together to attain happiness and decrease unhappiness, working jointly in many ways, but because their activities are full of desires, these activities are never a source of happiness, and they never diminish distress. On the contrary, they are a cause of great unhappiness. So a few weeks ago, we had a nice family come and visit us, and they were originally born in India, and of course, for work reasons, they emigrated to the USA. And wonderful family. And we started to speak about well, I guess they were curious how we came to Krishna consciousness, and so they were asking different devotees, how did you come to Krishna consciousness, and getting everybody's story. So really, really nice family. They had a son. He must have been 8 or 10 years old. And they were expressing how glad they were to find, the farm and Gita Nagari. Initially, they heard about the farm from a devotee at the Bhakti Center. I think I may have shared that. But they were explaining how when they came to the US, they were excited, for the new chapter in their lives as husband and wife. And, when they came, they used to go to Disney World, go to the movies, parks, so many places, just enjoying the different activities that were available in the USA. But they very quickly, after a few years, realized that, they've been through doing all of these activities and, trying to enjoy, but still they weren't happy. Still they were, searching for something else. They were finding that, going to the movies was becoming boring, even though it was new films all the time. There's always a new premiere film, being released practically, I think, every week or every month. So even though, the movies were ever fresh in one sense, because, they weren't the repeat movies, still, life was becoming very, very boring and dull and mundane. So in this way, we can see that, a man and wife is planning, their happiness. Of course, nobody wants to plan for unhappiness. So everybody is trying to decrease the unhappiness. Still, the big question is why? Unfortunately, they were saying that they found a Buddhist monastery upstate New York, and they started to go there for some time and meditate, and still they were a little restless. And eventually, somehow or the other, they met the devotees. And, they were very, very glad to meet the devotees and, regularly attend the programs in New York, New Jersey. So they were, of course, even more happy to find out about Gita Nagari. So in this way, they could see, the practicality in their lives that, associating with devotees was just so wonderful, so nice, hearing the discourses, gradually elevating themselves. And, they're continuing on their journey. So in this way, you can see even on a mundane level, that just engaging in fruitive activities doesn't give one joy, no matter how much one tries to do it. And then in the next verse, it is mentioned how for Chitraketu, in this case, one should further understand that the spirit soul, although very difficult for the materialist to perceive, is above all these conditions, and by the strength of one's discrimination, one should give up the desire for fruitive results in the present life and in the next. Thus, becoming experienced in transcendental knowledge, one should become my devotee. So this advice, is being given by the Supreme Lord himself to Chitraketu. Of course, Chitraketu is in a very, very fortunate position. And I doubt, any one of us is ever going to become so fortunate in this life to be able to meet the Supreme Lord like Chitraketu is meeting. At some point, when we become, very, very advanced in our Krishna consciousness, we'll have so much of glimpses of, interactions with the super soul in the heart guiding us. Still, Chitraketu was in a very, very fortunate position to meet the Supreme Lord. So then the advice is given in 64, O King, if you accept this conclusion of mine, being unattached to material enjoyment, adhering to me with great faith, and thus becoming proficient and fully aware of knowledge and its practical application in life, you will achieve the highest perfection by attaining me. So, this is, of course, why we have these Srimad Bhagavatam classes, so that we can share with each other, how to practically apply this spiritual knowledge in our day-to-day lives as we go along in our day-to-day lives. Because it's one thing, reading these great examples given in the Bhagavatam, but, how to apply it in our day-to-day lives. And this is the most value we get from these Bhagavatam classes. Of course, if we prepare for the Bhagavatam, we'll get more value. So I don't want to talk anymore. I wanted to ask devotees to share some practical realizations from these verses in their day-to-day lives of, how we can help each other apply these things in our day-to-day lives. Dear devotees, please help.
Hare Krishna, good morning, Dhruva.
Haribol.
Thank you for your class. Thank you for for showing up with so much going on. And for me, I think the practical application of these verses and all the verses we read in this chapter, it's had a profound effect on my personal life in two ways. The first is just in reading these things and hearing Krishna Katha and knowing that, like it says that verse when you read it about marriage and you kind of went, and it's like, right, this is something that seems like so given in the material world. People think, oh, you'll grow up, you'll get married, you'll have a husband, you'll have a wife, you'll work together, you'll achieve things, it'll be wonderful, it'll be blissful till death do you part. And then they grow up, they get married and find out that that may not be the case. And so there's that piece of it, of just the real experience of it, and realizing that the bill of goods that we're often sold in the material world through Maya, just it does not materialize in real time. But for me personally, I think everyone here knows that my husband and I underwent the tragedy of losing children, and this was a chapter that my Guru Maharaj went through with me in depth at that time. And what I can say is that we talk a lot about how chanting the holy names puts us in the presence of Krishna. But we don't often speak about the fact that Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be the literary incarnation of Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
And at a time when I almost couldn't even hear this without falling apart, the presence of Krishna in the verses made a huge difference. So when and I think it's in people sometimes recite it at the beginning before they read Srimad Bhagavatam, about how hearing Srimad Bhagavatam in regular attendance, it makes devotional service to Krishna like a fact, and it cleans the heart of almost everything that disturbs it.
Mm-hmm.
And that just happens in my experience to be true. So by coming back to this over and over again in different classes and reading on my own and having gone through it with my Guru Maharaj, it has relieved so much of that suffering. So for me, it's just important to always remember that there's more going on here than just hearing and reading. This is the presence of Krishna, and you cannot come into the presence of Krishna without being changed in a positive way, whether you want to or not, whether you think it's going to happen or not, whether you believe it or not. It actually happens. It's a science. So thank you so much for your class. Thank you for setting the time aside, because I know you're busy all the time, and for having such a, I don't know, you seem so happy about it, even when you rush. And that, I think, is also from the presence of Krishna and being in the presence of the devotees. So, Hare Krishna, thank you, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much, Mata. Appreciate it. Yes, even though we may not, thank you so much for sharing those words of wisdom, and like you're saying, it's, practical application, that, when there is some difficulty, this is generally when most of us, turn to God, turn to Krishna, looking for some solace. And yes, of course, we want to talk to Krishna, because he's a person, and explain our dilemma, our problems, all of these things. Still, we should not forget the basics, and the basics is chanting Hare Krishna and reading as well Srimad Bhagavatam. So even though some difficulty, major difficulty might be there, still we should not lose this essence. And gradually, as we take the medicine, we will gradually start to heal and feel better. So of course, the classic example is there, if someone who has jaundice, of course we understand now that the cure for jaundice is sugar candy. But when one has jaundice, then sugar candy tastes very, very bitter, uh, you know something that cannot be digested. Still, that very same thing is the cure. And so gradually, one will be cured of jaundice if he's able to have the candy, despite the disgusting taste at that time. So in a similar way, we should see reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially in the association of devotees, is the real cure. Chanting the Maha Mantra is the real cure. And so despite our circumstances, we should still keep taking the medicine, and it will gradually have an effect. And of course, the important word Mata mentioned is that it is the science. And, what we're reading now is, different personalities. Of course, these were very empowered personalities. Still, these are, examples of them having taken the medicine and got the desired result. So that is all, I think Krishna is asking for. Take the medicine, and, as you take the medicine, gradually, the result will be achieved. But of course, due to our impatience, the living entity is always protesting taking the medicine. There's a million reasons not to take the medicine. Still, we should try to encourage each other to take the medicine, and in this way we will gradually cleanse the heart. Other devotees, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
I kind of want to follow in the vein of Mother Leela Kishore in thanking you for making Gita Nagari so accessible to so many different diverse groups. And as you say, associating, with advanced devotees is very important. And of course, Mother Yashoda Mai, and I think Aunt Jamil also gave a yoga class sometime last evening. If nothing else, it sparks curiosity.
Yep.
And curiosity, we know, always sparks questions. And questions leads to deeper understanding and meaning.
Yes.
I think that that's very, very important. So thank you for perhaps giving a stepping stone to those that may already be, on a path, but offers them another option in terms of their value and philosophy in life. Hare Krishna.
Haribol, thank you, Mother Jamba. You're, of course, too kind. Somehow Guru Maharaj, has done so much here at Gita Nagari, and facilitated, of course, so many souls around the world. And of course, Prabhupada Gita Nagari was so special also. So, all of these ingredients, in one sense, we're, not doing much. We're just trying to live our life, so to speak, in this bhakti journey. And you can see Radha Damodar just facilitating so many nice things at Gita Nagari, encouraging so many devotees to help, come and contribute and make Gita Nagari, the real hospital for the heart that Prabhupada speaks about. And in this way, so many people are taking access. Actually, something most amazing happened even yesterday evening. And when you see these miracles, just makes you really, your faith deepens actually. So yesterday I was at the gift shop. Of course, Krishna Surya was looking for someone to be at the gift shop, and we didn't have many volunteers. And of course, Mother Divya, she had such a long day yesterday. So in the evening, she had just come home, and she was also tired, but also just having her lunch, at 7 or 8 p.m. After a long day out with appointments. And so anyway, I of course volunteered to go to the gift shop because a few people were leaving either early in the morning or even some left yesterday evening, I think. These retreat goers came and purchased, different items from the gift shop. And there was one lady who took a book bag. We have this Gita Nagari printed logo on these small, cotton book bags. And she was finalizing her purchase. She bought a few other items. And when she came to, pay for her items, she was, just somehow deep in meditation, thinking, does she have all the right items? And then at the last moment, as I was, finalizing the bill, she quickly switched out that cotton book bag for a japa bag. She said, "This bag looks so nice." And she switched it out for a japa bag.
It's wonderful.
Thinking Krishna is just, Krishna is in the heart. And I don't know, I think she's a repeat attendee to this retreats. And of course, she sees devotees all the time, with their japa bags walking around. And So who knows? I didn't want to push her, and who knows what her plan is. She definitely bought some small beads, and so it seems like she's definitely ready for her journey. So in this way,
People die. That is a miracle.
yeah. And so, as I said, it deepens one's faith. Okay, anyone else wants to share some thoughts, realizations, please?
I think I have a little something to contribute.
Please.
I was thinking about the translation here to text 64. O King, if you accept this conclusion of mine, being unattached to material enjoyment and adhering to me with great faith, and thus becoming proficient and fully aware of knowledge and its practical application in life, you will achieve the highest perfection by attaining me. And I was just reminded of some things that Srila Prabhupada regularly said in this connection. One thing that he often repeated in morning walk conversations and room conversations, instances in which he was speaking with his senior disciples, GBC men, sannyasis, individuals who were acting in the capacity of leaders. I remember one instance in particular in Mayapur, as I was present. I had the opportunity to hear the morning walks, and Srila Prabhupada was instructing his leaders that the devotees should not be idle. Everyone should be engaged. No one should be idle at any time. They should always be very fully engaged. They should be so fully engaged that there's not enough hours in the day to complete all of the service. And he explained that he gave many explanations for why this was important, but it was practical, a practical means of realization. On the one hand, there are practical considerations of things that simply need to get done in the course of managing a temple or any project. But additionally, for those that are engaged in doing those services, the practice is not just simply that you perform some work, but that as you're working, you are practicing to remember Krishna. So there is what is it? Is that Bhagavad Gita 8:7? I can't remember now. Krishna speaking about he's telling Arjuna to perform his duty and at the same time to think of him. And so Srila Prabhupada explained to us that that this is the practice, the meditation, that while you're performing some particular duty or some service for the temple or whatever the project may be, you're cleaning the floor, cleaning the bathroom, whatever it may be, you are practicing this process of Krishna meditation to think of Krishna simultaneously, and also at the same time you are performing these services in such a way that you are not concerned with the results. Not that you don't want to do the job nicely and get a good result, but that you yourself are not attached to the fruits of action, that you perform that service with detachment. On the one hand, you're not trying to derive some personal sense gratification from it. You're not looking to gain anything, but you are trying to do the service nicely for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna.
Yes.
So in these ways, Srila Prabhupada instructed us on the practical application of menial varieties of devotional service, how to realize Krishna practically in the course of doing apparently mundane and manual labor in some cases, or simply cleaning the floor, but it's the process is that as we're doing these services, we're supposed to be trying to remember Krishna in one way or another. And there's lots of different ways to do that, but important to understand what the process is, that it's not just a matter of cleaning the floor. It's more than that. We remember that that this is it's Krishna's floor. It's the floor of Krishna's temple. Krishna's temple is non-different from Krishna. It's non-different from Vaikuntha. At Gita Nagari, the entire property is of the same nature. So everything must be kept very nicely, maintained nicely, kept very clean, and so on. And meditating in that way, it becomes easy to remember Krishna, that this is Krishna's abode, this is Krishna's place, this is Krishna's property. There's lots of different ways to remember Krishna. Some devotees choose to simultaneously hear something. In the old days, we had hardwired speakers all through the temple connected to a reel-to-reel tape recorder. But not then later came cassette tapes and portable cassette players, and now we have smartphones that can play recorded lectures and so on for us. But so there's lots of different ways to remember Krishna. But wonderful if you can learn to see Krishna in your service, and gradually learn to see Krishna everywhere. But anyway, it's a practice to learn to see Krishna in everything. Hey, it's late, but if no one has anything else, and if anyone is interested, today is I think it's the disappearance day of Jayananda Prabhu, our first ISKCON saint. And so I could read a little bit about Jayananda for those who are interested. Shall I do that?
Anyone else wants to share any quick realizations that you may have thought of that Taraka Prabhu could have also jogged our memories on? Yes, thank you so much for those nice points, Taraka Prabhu. Yes, otherwise, what is the alternative if we're not thinking about Krishna? I mean, maybe that's why I try to keep moving all the time, because I don't want any idle time. And so that's one trick I try to use, no idle time. And then, like you said, depending on our consciousness of the work that we're doing, and of course, on the farm, we're working for Krishna in one sense. And so it should be a little easier for us to, be in the right consciousness. Otherwise, what's going to be our consciousness? If we're doing some mundane, so-called mundane work of, cleaning the floors, then we're just going to be upset, angry. Why me? Why does it have to be me cleaning this floor? Why does it have to be me cleaning these dishes? But still, if we can do it in the mood of, the this will be pleasing to Krishna. Of course, dishes, that's a sensitive topic at Gita Nagari, washing dishes for many devotees. And we should become convinced that cleaning the pots at Gita Nagari particularly will cleanse our heart. And to the degree that we can realize that, the better we will be situated in our Krishna consciousness. So we shouldn't see this as a mundane activity at Gita Nagari, that, washing dishes. Because, of course, nobody likes to wash dishes. Nobody becomes very enthusiastic. And still, Devamrita Maharaj made it very, very clear. I asked him particularly about washing dishes one time. And he said, how many of you like to eat? So if you like to eat, then no problem. Everybody should wash dishes. So yes, thank you, Taraka Prabhu. Anybody else wants to share something before we can read about the life of Jayananda Prabhu?
As Tarka Prabhu was speaking, he mentioned, I think, verse 8 or 9 in Bhagavad Gita, but I was looking at Bhagavad Gita 9:22, which I think speaks to what he was referring to. My Sanskrit is terrible, but the translation is, "But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have." And in the purport, it says that one who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other services, cultivating friendship, and surrendering fully to the Lord. And of course, it goes on to say that, such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies, which makes a devotee perfect in self-realization, so that his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a devotee undoubtedly approaches the Lord without difficulty. This is called yoga. You were speaking about yoga. By the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga. And when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable conditioned life.
Yes, wonderful verse. Thank you for finding the verse, Jamba. That's a really powerful verse. Yeah. Actually, that's like you read, all those, that verse carries, so much of powerful weight. Taraka Prabhu, actually, he did quote the correct verse that he was referring to, 8:7 from Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time, carry out your prescribed duty of fight. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without a doubt. So, this is on the battlefield. Very, very time and situation. So just think of me, and, whereas it would have just been mundane fighting if he wasn't thinking of Krishna. And then, who knows what would have happened if it was just a complete mundane situation. But in this way, Krishna was assuring Arjuna that fighting, thinking of me, you will attain me without a doubt. So thank you. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Yep, please.
Tarka Prabhu's sharing was like a purport to the verse that Jamabadi mentioned.
Right.
And also in the 18th chapter, 57th verse, Chaitasa Sarvakarmani Mai Sanya Shamatpara Buddhi Yogam Upasrita Mach Chitta Satatam Prabha. in all activities just depend upon me. And sarva karmani means all activities, all kinds of activities. Just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. So Krishna
Yes.
said here that all activities, and even we were discussing the other day, me and some other devotees, that even in whatever association, even how to give up the association of non-devotees. Prabhupada gave a twist on that in a CC verse in the purport, and he said, "But association with pounds and shillings men, or vishayis, materialists who are simply interested in sense gratification, pollutes one's mind and hampers such continuous remembrance of Lord Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore advised asat sanga tyaga, a Vaishnavachar. A Vaishnava should behave in such a way as to never associate with non-devotees or materialists." And then he says, one can avoid such association simply by always remembering Krishna within his heart. So that stands out for me as, in all activities just depend upon me. Because if you're working outside or associating with or in the company of non-devotees, it is asat sanga tyaga if we are remembering Krishna within our heart. And that's one way, because, the question comes up sometimes. How do we not be in their company? And he's saying here that if we're always meditating on Krishna, remembering Krishna in our hearts, then the consciousness that we have.
You're breaking up, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Sorry, no matter what sangha we have, trying to make cooking at the same time. No matter what the association, because our meditation is Krishna at the deepest level, that will come through any external situation. So that's just something related to all activities, just to
Yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because so many devotees keep jobs, and then they sometimes one can start to feel that oh, I'm not Krishna conscious enough because I keep a regular job out there. But like I think we discussed previously that Prabhupada had it all bases covered for our well-being and advancement in Krishna consciousness. We just have to follow the procedure. We don't have to invent new things. We don't have to get any PhD degrees. Yeah, it's all there in the scripture. And if we can just keep reading in the association of devotees like this, all this nectar comes out. So to find that particular nectar that you found, Jagannath Pandit, would have been very difficult. I would have had to scrutinizingly read, Bhagavatam, then CC, and extract all the nectar out. But in this way, you've extracted so much of nice nectar that how do we do this whilst keeping a regular job out there? And again, it's about our consciousness, remembering Krishna, and we can still do this and work out there as well. So thank you. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, such nice discussion in class, devotees. Wanted to throw some more verses into the mix.
Yes, please.
Bhagavatam 12:351. Kaler dosha nidera jan asti hieko mahanguna kirtana deva krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. My dear king, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, one can become free from material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. It's like what you were saying, and then the following verse is also supporting what you were saying. Kriteya dhyayato vishnum tretayam yajato makai dvapare paricharyayam klautadhari kirtanat. Whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can be attained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Also, Bhagavad Gita 2:47, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhur ma te sangostva karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty, just like you were talking about not being attached to the results. And also, Bhagavatam 10:1-4 talks about how descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Nivritta tarshe ragi manad, bhav shadat chotra mano bhiramat, ka uttama shloka gunanuvadat, puman virajeta vinapashugnat. Glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is performed in the Parampara system. That is, it is conveyed from spiritual master to disciple. Such glorification is relished by those no longer interested in the false temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. Descriptions of the Lord are the right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. Therefore, who will cease hearing such glorification of the Lord, except a butcher or one who is killing his own self? Also, you were talking about that couple who came with their family and they had so many desires to enjoy the different things in America. And Bhagavad Gita 2:70 says, Apur yamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So in that purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada discusses how desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. He also says that others who, however, who want to fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. He says that the fruit of workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. So there's one of the verses you read and today talked about being like full of so many desires, and that's what's also helping us be unhappy. Like that couple, they had so many things they were trying to do, but then whenever we become desireless and only desire to serve Krishna, then we can be more peaceful. And lastly, there's this concept like that you actually cannot have happiness in this world. It's just like the relief from distress. So you're drowning in the ocean, and then you come up for a gasp of air, a gasp of water, and then that's just that's your happiness. No, that's just your relief from distress.
Yeah, jam-packed. All this nectar. Thank you so much, Jana, for bringing up all this nectar for us. So, of course, we understand ultimately, the goal, remember Krishna. I'm also just remembering this verse, pure devotional service. What is pure devotional service? Anya bilasita sunyam, jnana karmadi anavritam, anukulyena krishnanu, silanam bhakti uttama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain, through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. This is called pure devotional service. So, of course, that goal is far away for us, at least for me. Still, we should make some endeavor to perform devotional service favorably, lovingly to the Supreme Lord. And in this way, he becomes pleased. Because, what's the sense of performing devotional service, with a grudge, angry, upset? Still, the fact that one is doing devotional service, you'll get some benefit. But if you want the full benefit, of performing loving devotion, then it's really all right. Then in this way, we'll get the desired result without a doubt. So thank you, devotees, for sharing. If there's nobody else with any more points, then Taraka Prabhu, please, you can share about Jayananda Prabhu and his glories and how Prabhupada, really loved Jayananda.
All right, Krishna. Yeah, Jayananda was an extraordinary personality. He's one of the early devotees from San Francisco. He was responsible. Well, he was involved in the construction of the first Rath Yatra cart in the United States, and was involved in the construction of many of the carts utilized in different cities in the U.S., including the one that was built in New York for the Rath Yatra that on Fifth Avenue that Srila Prabhupada participated in. Jayananda was he was a big devotee of Lord Jagannath, and an extraordinarily enthusiastic devotee, very, very hardworking, very humble and unassuming. Um, um, Sometimes when devotees first met him, they could not understand who or what he was. He would be the guy that was collecting the trash, taking out the garbage, um, running errands, and purchasing boga and so on. He would do a lot of manual labor, um, cleaning floors, whatever it might be. But once you met him, he was extraordinarily friendly. He would immediately, and anyone that came into his presence, he would immediately befriend them and begin to preach to them. And he was just an ocean of Krishna consciousness. He was extraordinarily warm and friendly. He treated people in such a way that everyone would just absolutely fall in love with him. He took very, very good care of young devotees, and Jayananda was a colossal fan of Krishna Prasad, and he always made sure that everyone in the vicinity got lots of prasad, as well as himself. He just simply loved prasad. He was all about prasad. Anyway, extraordinarily hard worker. I remember him in New York working on the Roth Guard. He lived on the Roth site, which was a retired train yard that had been purchased by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump had given us permission to utilize that train yard for the construction of the Roth cart, because it required a lot of space to be able to do the construction. So at no charge, Donald Trump allowed us to utilize his property, and a very large Roth cart was constructed. Anyway, Jayananda was always in charge of these constructions, and Srila Prabhupada gave the instruction that all Rath carts in ISKCON henceforward must always have a picture of Jayananda on the front of the cart. In all of our Rath Yatras, it was customary that Jayananda Prabhu would always be the person that would steer the cart. He would walk in front of the cart and control the steering of the cart. That was his particular service during the Rath Yatra. Anyway, a very hardworking individual, and but very very humble. He didn't. He had no ambitions. He wasn't interested in any sort of position. He didn't want to become a big manager. He was qualified to do pretty much anything, but he was satisfied with just some humble menial service. In San Francisco, he drove a taxi and gave all of his earnings to support the temple. At some point, the temple president in San Francisco um, uh, left the temple for Mexico. Srila Prabhupada had given him permission to open a uh, a preaching center somewhere in Mexico. Chikshukananda had been the San Francisco temple president, so he left, and Keshava Prabhu, who was in Los Angeles, was sent to San Francisco to be the temple president. And Keshava previously knew Jayananda, and he was a little uncomfortable about assuming the presidency of San Francisco because he really felt that Jayananda should be in that position, and Jayananda was senior to Keshava. But he was reassured by Jayananda that Jayananda just didn't want anything to do with any such position. Anyway, there was a wonderful event that took place on one occasion that is described in Radha Damodar Vilas, in the first volume of Radha Damodar Vilas, and it illustrates a bunch of aspects of Jayananda's character, and it's delightful to hear. It's very amusing. So I'd like to read that. Again, this is from Radha Damodar Vilas, Volume 1. So Keshava Prabhu enjoys being in Jayananda's association again, and they renew their old friendship. Jayananda is like family, and he makes Keshava feel welcome in his new service. He always cooperates with Keshava and helps him make Krishna conscious decisions. When Jayananda arranges a program at a prison, he invites Keshava to come along. He also calls the Berkeley Temple to invite Dunavir. I'm not sure if Dunavir was married at that time. He's now a sannyasi, as is Keshava. This is a very special arrangement, Jayananda explains over the phone. He's talking now to Dunavir. He says, "You have to make halava and simply wonderfuls with lots of butter." Dunavir is Mr. Enthusiasm, so he immediately runs out and purchases tons of butter. Then he cooks up an incredible batch of halva, just swimming in ghee, along with a batch of simply wonderfuls that are oozing with butter. The next morning, Jayananda and Keshava, with a few San Francisco brahmacharis, drive the van over the Bay Bridge to pick up Dunavir and some Berkeley devotees for the prison program. They load two big pots full of halva. Dunavir sits along with the Berkeley brahmacharis. When everybody is comfortably seated, Jayananda heads the van onto the freeway for the trip to the prison. After driving down the road for barely 5 minutes, Jayananda turns to Keshava with a big smile on his face and says, "Well, Keshava, maybe we should just taste this prasadam, so we'll be very enthusiastic for preaching. What do you think?" Sure, Keshava at once agrees. I think it's a good idea. He turns around and calls out to a brahmachari in the back. Jayananda thinks we should sample a little of the prasadam to get us in the mood. Hand out simply to every devotee and pass them up front for us. So the brahmachari gives a simply wonderful to every devotee and passes two up front for Keshava and Jayananda. After finishing his simply, Jayananda says, boy, that was really good. We should sample a little of the halva too. What do you say, Keshava? Yeah, I think you're right. Keshava turns around once more, tells the brahmachari, pass out a little halva to each devotee and send a plate up for Jayananda and me. Because Jayananda is the person making the suggestions, nobody disagrees. After finishing his halva, Jayananda tells the devotees in the back, that halva was great. Maybe we should have just one more simply wonderful. Keshava immediately gives the order for everyone to take one more simply each and sends several up front for the driver. Boy, this prasadam is the best I've ever had, says Jayananda. And that halva was so good too. Let's have a little more. What do you think, Keshava? Yeah, Prabhu, you're definitely right about that. Keshava turns again and requests the devotees in the back, pass out a little more of that halva to everyone. Enjoying the delicious prasad, the devotees happily drive to the program. Dhanavir is also enjoying the mood of the devotees, but a little anxiety creeps up on him. He wants to make sure that there is still enough prasad for the program. He leans over to have a look in the pots. To his amazement, there is nothing left. Not a grain of halva, not a single simply wonderful. The pots are completely empty. Dhanavir is plunged into anxiety. Oh my God, we're so sinful, we're so fallen. We've eaten all the prasad that was meant for distribution at the jail. Just then they reach the prison. As they pull the van up, they are stopped by the guard. Jayananda rolls down the window, and the guard sticks his head into the van. He looks sternly at the devotees and he says, so you know the rules. You guys don't have any food with you. You know you're not allowed to bring any food inside. Jayananda has a big grin on his face as Keshava assures the guard they have not brought any food. And that's the story. This was all a transcendental trick of Keshava. He tricked Dhanavir into preparing a whole bunch of halva and simply wonderfuls. Dhanavir is thinking it was for the prison, but you're actually not allowed to bring prasad into the prison. So all the while, Jayananda knew that he and the devotees were going to consume all the prasad, but he didn't tell that to Dhanavir. Anyway, that was typical joking of Jayananda Prabhu. There's an entire book written about Jayananda. There's many, many stories, and all of those stories are absolutely wonderful. I encourage everyone to hear whatever you can about Jayananda. There's much on the internet, lots of narrations of his pastimes. Extraordinary devotee. He passed away in, it was either late 76 or earlier in 77. Srila Prabhupada was still present. Jayananda had he had some form of cancer. While he was building the Roth cart in New York, he was very sick with cancer, but he didn't tell anyone. He was in terrible pain, and he continued to work around the clock on that Roth cart to get it done in time. And then afterwards, he had to be hospitalized, and he had some Social Security income that he had saved, and which was needed for his medical expenses, but he chose instead to abandon any effort to treat himself for the cancer, and instead sent all of the Lakshmi to Srila Prabhupada and resolved to just leave his body, which he did in short order. Srila Prabhupada was aggrieved to hear of the disappearance of Jayananda. They had a close relationship, and anyway, he remarked that that Jayananda had gone back home, and instructed us that that the anniversary of his disappearance should be celebrated all over ISKCON, along with all the other Vaishnava personalities. And so Jayananda became the first ISKCON saint. So we're already past 8:30. I'll stop there. Does anybody have any last comments or questions? And otherwise, we can wrap this up.
That was an ecstatic pastime and sharing about his life. Thank you so much, Tarka Prabhu. And I think you said something about how his pastimes were absolutely wonderful. Maybe we should say they're simply wonderful.
Yes. Simply wonderful indeed. All right, then, Prabhus, thank you for patiently hearing, and thank you for your wonderful association. Have an ecstatic day of devotional service in blissful Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.